Hi, I'd like to talk a bit about how I think and where I get my ideas from. So I describe my thinking process a bit like panning for gold, in that it feels like I have this big scoop um, full of um, full of ideas or thoughts or possible solutions, and then I kind of just sift through them. But it doesn't feel like I'm so directly involved in the sifting process. Um, like with panning for gold, the filtering is done by the water, by the pan, by gravity, and so in a way, it's a process that I feel slightly maybe slightly not involved in. I'd say I tend not to think in a linear or procedural manner. And so I tend not to think in terms of words. If I'm writing or speaking or having to communicate with someone, then I'm forced to think in terms of words to work out what I'm writing or saying. But in general, they don't come into my thought process. I tend to think more in terms of sensations or feelings. And I'm also quite a visual thinker, though the images that I think of, it's not necessarily the images themselves that I'm processing, but often the images represent some deeper idea uh, or deeper meaning. I guess it's in a similar way that words aren't about the letters and words aren't about how they sound, but they're more about the kind of deeper meaning behind the words. For me, like my thinking, it's more about the deeper meaning behind the images that I have in my mind. I think one thing that comes to mind is I saw a interview recently of Magnus Carlsen, the world chess champion, and he was asked where he got his moves from, and his answer was that he just kind of looked at the board and they just came to him straight away. And then he was asked that if the moves just came for him straight away, then why does he spend half an hour to an hour sitting down looking at the board before making a move? And he says that he can have the move come to him, but he doesn't know where it comes from, and it's important to check that it is actually an accurate move. And I think for dominant intuitive types like myself that kind of rely on intuition for our thought process, it's important to check that it is actually working and that the solutions or processing that it does is correct and relevant. Because sometimes you might miss something or you might be making an assumption, and so the processing will be off and the result that you get won't be correct, even though you kind of feel that it is correct. And so yeah, it's important to kind of take a step back and think, well, where does this come from? Is it actually correct and relevant? And I think there is a tendency in a lot of intuitive types to kind of not take that step. One subject that it reminds me of a lot is mathematics, because in mathematics you can have an intuition about a problem, and you can kind of think, oh, the solution must be this or the solution must be like this, but then it's a case of how do you prove it? And so you have this, on the one hand, the process of using intuition to find the solution, and then on the other hand, using a more kind of linear process, a process that you're more involved in to check it's correct. A famous story is how Pythagoras, his intuition told him that the square root of 2 was rational, but in fact it was irrational, and that caused some trouble for him and his school of thought. Another thing about how I think is when I come to conclusions, I'd say I'm very non-committal when it comes to conclusions, in that if I decide something is correct, then in a way my mind isn't necessarily made up, or I'd say maybe it isn't ever made up. It reminds me in a way of how you might, say, watch a sports match, like a tennis match, and one player might beat the other player in a game, but does that mean that the winner is necessarily the better player? You know, a lot of sports, like tennis, the format of a match contains many different small games, and you know, you have games, then you have sets, and then whoever gets the most sets is said to be the winner of the match. So in a way, it's through many different comparisons, or many different trials, that a conclusion is reached. So I'd say I feel like that about my conclusions, that often I need to come to the same conclusion several times before I might decide, you know, oh, hang on, this could be correct. Anyway, I'd say that's perhaps that's perhaps it for today. Thanks for watching.